For those of you that do not know me, I'd like to say hello. My name is Charlotte Mukan. I'm the director of the Pelham Arts Center. And first of all, I want to thank you so much for joining us in our virtual space. These virtual studio visits have really been fascinating. It is a look to see the inside journey of what an artist does and creates and kind of their own life pathways. We have done over 35 of these since the COVID crisis started. Now, I know you love seeing me talk, but I'm not the star today. We're going to go directly to Valeri Larko in her studio in New Rochelle. So welcome and thank you, Valeri.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. We're in my studio in New Rochelle, New York. I'm being assisted today by my friend Amy Regalia. She's going to be filming me. She's also a terrific photographer. Thanks, Amy. So today I'm going to give a little tour of my studio, and I'm going to start with some very early paintings up until what I've been doing more recently and then what I've been painting since the pandemic. Obviously, the world has changed since COVID-19 made its way into our lives, let's say. So I went to art school back in the 80s, early 80s, and I went to a little-known school called Dupree School of the Arts in Plainfield, New Jersey. Then I went to the Art Students League and also the National Academy of Design. And my whole thing back then was learning to paint figures, people from life. That was what I thought I was going to be, a figure painter. Well, life took a different turn, but it was a good training. It was a good start. So I'm going to start here, right over here, with one of my earliest paintings, right out of art school. This is from 1986. I was 26 years old. And I painted this in my mother's laundry room. I just finished art school, and I always did my laundry there. I didn't have a washer or dryer, so I'd go and visit her and do my laundry. And one of the things I love about this painting is this big Dixie cup dispenser. Talk about sign of the times. So that really dates that painting because nobody has these anymore. But back in like the 70s, and I think even maybe the 80s, they were a big deal. Everybody had them in their bathroom. So you have a fresh paper cup. Now we would just think that was wasteful, but back then it was like all the rage. And I just love that with my mother's bright orange laundry room. And even though at this point I did not know I was going to wind up painting urban and industrial landscapes for the better part of my life, I still seem to have already had a sensibility or an interest because I look at all the pipes and that and big thing. So it even has a bit of an industrial feel, even though this was right before I really got going painting urban landscapes on location. So around this time, towards the end of 1986, I moved to Jersey City, New Jersey. And that's where everything got started. I moved in to be with a boyfriend. The boyfriend didn't work out, but the relationship to the urban environment did. So this is one of my earliest paintings. This is from 1987. When I moved to Jersey City, I was like, oh, what am I going to paint? I was a very traditional painter. I'd had a traditional painting background. I did still lifes, I did figures, I did some landscapes, but they were, you know, the typical tree barn kind of thing. But now that was just not convenient because I like to go back and multiple times on site, and I was living in an urban environment. So here's a painting called the Skyway Motel. You can see it even has a little bit of signage and text, the Skyway Motel and the X on there. It's also kind of a dark and moody painting. I consider this my dark period. At that point, I don't know if it was where my head was at or probably just a lack of understanding. But I painted outside, that was my thing. But there's a lot of illumination outside. And I didn't realize that when I was bringing my paintings back inside, they were kind of dark. I've since learned to correct for that. Whenever I work on a painting now, I always bring it back inside midstream and make sure my values and my colors look good indoors, not just outdoors. So anyway, this is one from that period. Around this time too, I started going into the industrial parks that surround Jersey City and doing close-up of industrial sites and tanks. One art critic called those early paintings tank portraits. I'm just going to point to one over here just to give you an idea. This one I did after I moved to New Rochelle. That's in Eastchester. But that's sort of a tank portrait. I did a whole bunch of those for years in New Jersey. And then after I got done painting a lot of industrial sites, I then spent 6 years painting in an active salvage yard in Hackettstown, New Jersey. Somebody had written me this letter telling me how much they love my work, and they said, you should check out Kacharsky Salvage off of Cat Swamp Road. What a name. And I went there and I was like, whoa, this is the coolest place. And the salvage yard would be segregated with like computer monitors here, mufflers over there, washing machines here. It was just the coolest place. And I found plenty of subject matter to keep me busy for 6 years. And when I find something I really like, I tend to go all in and really explore it. Anyway, that's one of that earliest things. Now I'm going to just change something off the easel here so I can talk about stuff that I started after I moved to New Rochelle. Give me 1 minute. I'm going to put this painting up on the easel. And by the way, this is my French easel. One time somebody asked me if it was an antique. It's just the best darn French easel anyone ever made, and they don't make them anymore. So I'm going to keep that baby going for the rest of my life. Anyway, here's a painting of Ferris Stallmeyer in the Bronx, in the South Bronx. When I saw this place, I was actually painting something else. I was painting, when I first came here, I was painting kind of industrial stuff and bridges and a lot of urban water scenes. But one day when I was working on one of my bridge paintings, not too far from here, I kept seeing that pink building off in the distance. And I thought, what's that? I got to go check that out. And when I got up closer, I was like just mesmerized. The pink, the graffiti, the Shepherd Ferry, Obey Giant sticker. This place looked really cool. So I went back with a small canvas. I always start small when I'm starting a new series to make sure a place is okay for me to go back many times. And I can find parking and it's a cool place for me to be. So I set up first with a small painting. And this gentleman comes out, he's smoking a cigar. His name is Guillermo Gonzalez. He owns the business. He didn't own the building. He wished he did, but he owned the business. He was the president of Ferris Stallmeyer. And his father had been the president before him. He had inherited the business. And his father's actually the one who painted the building pink because it was the cheapest paint he could find when he went to the store to buy the paint for the building. But it really made the building stand out. Anyway, Guillermo went on to tell me that I really should paint the other side of the building. This building is half a city block because that's where the murals are. And he then told me that for over 10 years, he had encouraged the graffiti writers to use his building as their canvas. I consider Guillermo a bit of a visionary because this place is long gone at this point. This was 2012, and at the end of 2014, they had demolished. But for 10 years before that, like the early 2000s, he was having, people come and he would get them permits so that they wouldn't get in any trouble, no problems with the police. And a building like this or a wall like this is called a permission wall, where the owner of the place lets the artists do what they want. And he said they would show him sketches and he'd make sure the cops knew it was cool and they'd do their own thing. What was also very cool about Ferris Stallmeyer, I did like 20 paintings. I was there from 2012 to 2014, like I said. What was cool about it, besides my interest in it, is I would meet so many people when I was painting here. There would be people who would come and use the building as a backdrop for music videos, fashion shoots, models all dressed up, guys doing breakdance videos, tourists, lots of tourists like to visit this place. Although it was never as popular as 5 Points, lots of people know about 5 Points, but this was like the Bronx's version. It was a very cool place. I considered it a creative mecca. One day when I was out there painting towards the end of its life, it died at the end of 2014, they demolished it. Now it's really boring apartments, condos, kind of thing, really boring. But back right before they finished it, I was out there that summer, and I saw 2 big limos pick up, one white, pull up, one white, one black. The guys got out of one, the girls got out, and it was a big wedding party, and they took all their wedding pictures in front of this building. Anyway, it was a very cool place. I miss it. It's too bad there's not more places like that around. Okay, so fast forward a few years later, I start painting in the North Bronx. This is the Bronx Golf Center, the Bronx Golf Center. It is now abandoned. It's been abandoned for a while. And when I showed up, it was all fenced off. It's 12 acres, but it was all fenced off. And I saw a little break in the fence. This was in 2013. And I was thinking, I should check that out. So I slipped through the fence. It's the benefit of being small. I snuck right in. And I said, wow, this is a cool place. So I did one little small painting. It was about 12 by 24 inches in 2013. And then as I was getting done, I was almost done working on this painting, and I'm slipping out under the fence, and this car pulls up, and there's a guy in the front seat of the car, and I go over to the car with my painting, and he goes, what are you doing? And he's got a badge. He's an undercover cop, and I'm like, I'm just painting. And he goes, okay, I'm going to pretend I never saw you, which was very sweet, and he didn't give me a hard time. And then he proceeded to tell me a few stories about the place, and asked me if I ever saw any raccoons there. I had not seen any raccoons. But anyway, that was 2013, and I said, I'm not going back to this place. It's hot. I don't want to be hassled. I'll find something else. And then fast forward to winter of 2016, like February 2016. I'm driving down the highway. I'm always looking for new things of what I'm going to paint next in the winter. That's when I do all my reconnaissance, my checking things out. There's no leaves on the trees, and you can see things that you might miss at other times. So I'm going down 95, and I see this bright, colorful area out of the corner of my eye. So I pull right off the highway. I pull right off, and I park, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the golf center. I didn't realize how big it was, and I'd never seen this particular side. I was all the way on the other side. So I walked the perimeter of the fence, and lo and behold, right near this building here, which was the garage for the Bronx Golf Center, there's a hole in the fence. So I crawled through the fence, and I'm like, ooh, this is cool. And I had a sketch pad, and I took a couple of photos with my cell phone. I'm like, I'm going to come back. So I went back with a small canvas. Like I said, I like to start small because I never know if I'm really going to be able to stay in a place long enough to do really big paintings. It turns out this was a great place. Nobody bothered me. One time some cops did come in, detectives. They didn't do anything. They didn't find anything. I was grateful for that. The guy's like, just be careful. And he said, I like your art. He left me alone. I never saw any cops after that. But who I did see after that was I met Bill. Bill was the feral cat feeder. He would come in. There were feral cats living here and some other urban wildlife. And he would come in every Wednesday and fill up the cat feeder with food, dry food, and water. He'd leave some wet food. And I got to know him. And so that was sort of interesting. And then I have a friend, Bass Cove. I'm just going to point out this pen one here. Bass Cove is a very good friend of mine. She's a wonderful artist in her own right. And she said to me, if you ever come across any feral cats that need a home, I've got an opening. She's a big animal lover like I am. So when I was working on this painting, I was hearing this meowing in the bush. And feral cats don't usually talk, but this one was a talker. So I start bringing some wet food, and he'd start eating next to me while I paint. And eventually let me pet him a little bit. And then I called up Bass Cove. She said, I'll take him. So she said, send me a photo of the place where you got him from. So I got him. I got him fixed and everything. And I sent her a picture of this area here. And she said, we're going to call him Pen. I said, well, Pen stands for Public Enemy Number 1. There's a little 1 in the end. And she didn't miss a beat. She said, he's welcome to our private penitentiary. And that's how this sweet little cat went from living in not such a great place to living in a lovely apartment on the Upper East Side. Thank you, Bass Cove. Anyway, I'm telling you some of the stories behind this because there's one more interesting note. If you see this billboard here with a little creature on it, that is from The Secret Life of Pets. And it was a digital billboard, so it changed all the time. But that was the one that popped out. And because I had known about some of the secret lives of pets here, plus I had met some homeless people who were here, and one had a couple of pets. So that was a whole nother thing. I got her pet fixed. But she's doing great now. I'm not going to get into that. But there was all this secret lives of pets there. And I thought that was the right billboard for it. And luckily I had a camera, my cell phone, and I took a quick snapshot when it was up because it never stayed there long enough. And so I did the whole painting from life, but I did put the billboard in from a photo. And I work primarily from life. I'd say 90% of what I do is all done on site. There's a little bit I do in the studio to correct values so that my paints aren't dark, like my dark period, and adjust colors and, you know, just change things a little bit. But I'm not against working from photos. And if you need them, I think they're great. I just really like being on site. And one of the main reasons I like being on site is the stories, the people, the animals. Everybody I meet makes the whole experience a lot richer. And I think it makes the paintings ultimately better too, because I'm able to put more into them. So anyway, as I was painting out in the field, I was trying not to be in the way of anybody. I was staying away from the buildings themselves, because I got to know some of the people who were living there. They said, no, you can come, we like you. And so I started painting underneath. These are the paintings, these three here, that are underneath. This is the driving range. This place had driving range, miniature golf, and batting cages. So, and if you look here, these were the things that people would put their golf balls on and then hit the balls out into the field. And now the place has become another blank canvas for the local graffiti writers. So towards the end of 2016, it was getting to be winter and most of the homeless people had left by this point. And then I went back in the spring and I had noticed towards the end of 2016 that there were these amazing batting cage nets in the back and they were deteriorating. And they just had this beautiful feeling, kind of an eerie beauty of a time, you know, gone and the time just disappearing into the past. And I said, oh my God, I want to paint these. So I went back in the spring, and by then there were people cutting down trees and stuff. They were clearing some of the area because it was supposed to be sold and redeveloped. It's supposed to be having senior housing in a mall, shopping mall. None of that has ever happened. The place is more wild than it was when I was there. But anyway, I decided I had to get these nets while I could. And I'm just going to hold this paintbrush up. This is a number 2 Sable. It's an Old Holland, my favorite brush right now. And this is how I did those batting cage nets. Every single little one of those lines was done with this brush. I went through a couple of dozen of these paintbrushes while I was working on this painting. And while I was working on this painting, this one actually, I should say this, took me almost 4 months to do. My big paintings are very detailed and they do take me 2 to 3 months to do. But this one took a little longer because of the intricacies of the batting cage nets. But it was worth it. And while I was working on this, a friend came to visit me at the site one time and said, why don't you just take a photo? Wouldn't that be easier? Well, it really wouldn't have been. I could not have painted this from a photo. I needed to be able to walk under the batting cage nets, to understand the direction and the way they overlap, to make it look as good as it does. It wouldn't have been able, for me, I could have done it from a photo. So it really needed to be done on site. So it was time well spent. Okay, moving right along, I'm going to talk about this painting. After I finished the golf center paintings, then I started working on my next series of paintings, which I called Sign of the Times. It was for a solo show that happened in March, the end of March of this year, at Lions Weir Gallery in Chelsea. Lions Weir Gallery in New York City represents my paintings. They show my work. And they had shown the batting cage nets and all the golf center paintings. And this was my next solo show, which was called Sign of the Times. Unfortunately, we did not have an opening. It did not go live, but we did have a virtual exhibition of it, which I was grateful for. Anyway, Sign of the Times. What attracted me to this was this very fanciful Romantic Depot logo with the red lips, with a very utilitarian 15-minute parking. And they mean it. They don't want you there more than 15 minutes. They don't even want me parking on the street. Their parking lot only has 3 parking spots, I might add, so they're very protected of them. And when I was parking on the street through the paint, they're like, oh, can't you move? Can't you move? I'm like, oh, we worked it out, but it's very interesting. Anyway, it was the signage that attracted me along with the overgrown weeds and the tire shop, the fix-it tire shop, and the tires. And then here's a little camera. You know, you get too frisky in that parking lot, you spend more than 15 minutes, and they're going to come out and break up the action. So anyway, that was a fun place to paint. I'm going to come over here now and talk about a few more of the paintings from the Sign of the Times. In the show, I also had a lot of billboard paintings and stuff like the car wash. They just don't make signs like that, the high five car wash signs. That's a great one. So these were the kind of things I was interested in to go along with the other painting, 15-minute parking. And I'm going to talk about this one briefly. Celino and Barnes. I have never actually heard the jingle, but people love to sing it to me. When I was out on, this was in the North Bronx also, when I was out there painting this, people would come up to me and say, hey, yeah, there's a, I'm like, no, but I bet you they paid a lot of money for that phone number, 888-8888. Anyway, people would tell me to sing the song. And what I liked, why I was attracted to this, was because of the combination of the personal injury lawyers who want you to hire them if you get hurt, and the Botanica. The Botanica is a place that sells lotions and potions for just about anything that ails you. I met the owner of the business, Jane, and her husband's from Jamaica, and he was actually the man who made the lotions and potions. So they're both trying to help you in their own way, and I thought it was kind of an interesting juxtaposition. I'm going to talk about this one briefly over here. While I was painting the Romantic Depot parking lot, all 3 parking spaces, I kept looking at the front of the building, the Romantic Depot building. And I just love all this lettering and signage. And I did study lettering at Ducre School of the Arts. Bernard Bresky would be proud of me. I hated lettering when I started the class, but by the end, I really enjoyed it, and I knew how to do hand lettering, you know, all freehand. And it has served me well. Anyway, when I showed up to paint this painting, I saw that it was just around a little before Halloween, and they had just changed the mannequin into a pumpkin suit. Now, what doesn't say sexy than a man in a pumpkin suit? And I love the ghoul, and it was just a fun painting to paint. Okay, so after that one, I'm going to come over here and talk about one more, another Sign of the Times painting. This one is the Holiday Motel, also in the North Bronx. And after you die, you will meet God. There was a billboard there. But I had driven past this motel sign for years. And I really wanted to paint it, but it never really kind of gelled. I just didn't see it. And then one day I showed up, this was 2 summers ago, and there was the dead tree. And the dead tree sort of just pulled it all together for me. It mimics the color in the bricks. It's also a little bit of a metaphor for the site. Trust me, back in its heyday, people might have went to the Holiday Motel for a holiday, but they're not going there for that anymore. It's more of a, you know, afternoon delight kind of place. Anyway, while I was painting there, the owner of the company, his name is Andrew, the owner of the motel, came out and he introduces, said, hi, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I tell him. And then he says, great, have a good time, enjoy yourself. And then he goes back in the building, but as he's walking past the dead plant, he's there with his worker, Sonny. He looks at Sonny and points at the tree, and I'm like, that tree ain't long for this life. And I need that tree. I had it blocked in, but I hadn't had any of the details put in. I had the whole composition in and everything. So luckily, I had my cell phone. I took a couple of pictures of it, and I said, okay, I got insurance. I always look at things that might disappear. It's good to have a few pictures just in case you need a little insurance policy. Sure enough, a week later, he put in a new tree. 2 weeks after that, the tree was dead. There's something cursed about them. That particular planter. It was sort of funny. I think they even tried to replace it a 3rd time, but by then I was getting out of there. Anyway, it's that exit 13 that's sort of funny too. Now this billboard here, after you die, you will meet God. That billboard was not at this site. It was at another site in the Bronx, and I passed it a bunch of times. I'm like, God, I want that billboard. I said, I really want that billboard. I don't know when I'm going to paint it, but I want it. And then this painting just seemed to say, this is the right painting for that billboard. And the billboard that was there was really boring. It added nothing to this. So the subtitle of this painting could be Promises, Promises. Because as I said, I don't really think anybody's going to the Holiday Motel at this day and age for a holiday. And after you die, you will be gone. Nobody knows for sure. Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, a little bit of how I came up with that particular scene. I'm going to walk over here now and talk a little bit about this ongoing series of mini billboards. These billboards, I think I've got what, like 12 of them now. These billboards have been an ongoing series. I started doing them a few years ago because I noticed after the Great Recession that there were a lot of blank billboards. There were a lot of blank billboards in the Bronx and even in Brooklyn and other areas, but a lot in the South Bronx in particular. And they didn't, some of them came back, but a lot of them just never did. They remained blank. Sometimes they were just skeletal, like this one or this one. These are all still blank. Some of them even just completely disappeared. One of the ones that I did at the end of last year was this one that said courage. I finished this at the end of December 2019. At that time, we had no idea what was about to hit us. And I like to say of this one, we're going to need a lot of courage to get through this pandemic. So it's sort of taking on new meaning since I painted it. The world has certainly changed. And here's another 800 pain law. There's always a personal injury lawyer out there looking for your business. And then I'm going to just talk, here's another one. This one I just did recently. Who would have thunk? Staying home saves lives, alone together. I never thought I'd see a billboard that says that. I paid this was just about a month ago I finished it. I did do it outdoors, I didn't do it in my car. When the weather's nice, I prefer to stand outside. I only do the small paintings in my car in the winter because it's just a bit too cold. Here's another pandemic-related one. In honor of all our brave nurses, now and forever. We are so lucky that we have both brave nurses and brave doctors to help keep us safe while risking their own lives, trying to keep us healthy while they're taking big chances for themselves. We are very fortunate to have so many good nurses and doctors. Okay, I'm going to go over to this part of the studio now, and I'm going to start talking about my most recent paintings. These are ones, besides the COVID-related mini billboards, I've also done a few other paintings. Train trestles seem to be a theme with me lately. I'm going to talk about this one first. I finished this one a couple of months ago. What attracted me was the Welcome to the Bronx billboard. I had had my eye on that billboard for years. I even did a mini one of it sitting in my car a couple of years ago. But I could only paint at this site on the weekends. I couldn't paint there during the week because all of these businesses, all these parking areas would be packed. There'd be no place for me to park, and it just lots of truck traffic. But the pandemic sort of gave me an amazing opportunity to go here and spend some quality time. I didn't want to do it too much larger. I actually love painting large, and I would have loved to have done something twice as big. But as I said, big paintings take 2 to 3 months to do, and I didn't know if I'd have that much time. As it turned out, I had about 6 weeks, so I picked the right size, and I was able to finish it. And right as I was just trying to finish it, this company reopened, bunch of cars, more truck traffic. What's also interesting about this, I was attracted to this scene without the graffiti. When I had done the little billboard painting a couple of years earlier, there was no graffiti whatsoever on this building. There wasn't even any graffiti there last year. But what's happened, while we are all sheltering in place, the graffiti writers are having a field day. They're out there and they're doing their thing. And I really like the pop of the purple. This is already a great, colorful building. And as I mentioned, I really do like signage and lettering. And so the juxtaposition was quite nice, and the yellow, and then I love bridge, you get the cell tower. So this had a lot of elements that have always appealed to me. I'm going to talk about this painting next. This one I just finished recently, and it says, just a little soul to brighten your dark, COVID, gloomy days. Ruby 87 2020. Now you don't know this, But Ruby 87 is my tag. I actually have a tag, but I never use it on walls. I only use it in my paintings. It's sort of when I need a little pop of color or something else, I throw in a little Ruby 87. I can never paint it this well, though. I have nothing but respect for writers. What they can do with a spray can is amazing to me. But I'm a painter with a paintbrush. That's what I can do. Anyway, Ruby was my Black Shepherd mixed pup that I adored. She went over the Rainbow Bridge a number of years ago. 87 was the house number where we lived in New Jersey before I moved to New Rochelle, New York. Anyway, I adored Ruby, and she's been my tag for a number of years now. And a friend of mine, who will remain nameless, decided he liked that tag, and he's been borrowing it. He's been doing beautiful walls. And then when I saw that sign, I knew that was meant for me. And I thought, oh, that's really sweet. I got to paint that. I just got to paint that. And the thing with New Rochelle, they paint over graffiti faster than you could say Mary Poppins. They just cover it over with like some plain gray or something. So things don't last too long. So I'm like, I got to get out there and do this. Luckily, though, it's still there because they're not covering things up as quick. Things have changed. Anyway. And I also snuck in Tula, if you see this up here. Tula is my current pup. She's a lovely little red-nosed pit bull, and I thought she'd like a little walk-on appearance along with Ruby 87. I think they would have really liked each other if their time had overlapped. And just one other thing about this painting, I picked an overcast day because when it's sunny, this wall is just always in shadow. It doesn't look good. But when it's overcast, I could get the right lighting to really give Ruby 87 its full due. Okay, I'm going to talk about a little bit, just quickly, I'm going to mention another thing I've been doing lately. It goes along with those two new paintings. I've been doing a lot of train trestles. I even have one more here that I just did recently. This one I just finished, is one of the most recent ones. And you see it says stay home. And what I loved about this scene was the light. There are these train trestles, a lot of them, where the light just comes in and it's almost magical. The graffiti is an extra added bit of joy, let's say, and color and pop, but it's the light and the structure that's really beautiful too. So train trestles have kind of been my new theme. I went from billboards, Sign of the Times, to train trestles. I got one over here too. And this was another thing where the light just came in and created those great patterns. I'm going to talk a little bit now about process. What is the process I do when I'm going to work on a painting? I make these very rough sketches. And when I say rough, I mean rough sketches. They're not meant to ever be shown. They're purely so I can wrap my head around the composition that I want to do for any particular painting. I'm going to walk over here now and just show you. This is the sketch for Nick's Blue Diner. Nick's Blue Diner is a beloved landmark in the South Bronx, although it's closed now. And with the pandemic, it would have closed anyway. And then for that one, I had actually done a couple of sketches to figure out what composition. I wound up with a horizontal, but I was exploring vertical too. And you see, I make little notes like where the street is, what the place is, so I can remember if I want to go back. This little painting I did start on a warmish February day before the pandemic had hit. It took me, I think, until the end of March before I was able to get back there and work on that again. So a little bit more. Here's a sketch for one of my other billboards. This is an early billboard painting from when they first started going blank. And then I'm going to talk just a little bit about this here, a little bit about process. Amy and I are going to walk over to the big version of Romantic Depot 15-minute parking. Here. Okay, now you can see all three together. My rough sketch. Then for all big paintings, I do a color study. Because I'm going to spend 2-3 months on a painting, I want to make sure I have the right composition. And then I'm not going to start a big painting and then say, oh God, it would have been so much better if I added an extra 2 inches or changed something. So for all my big paintings, I do a color study. Occasionally for a smaller or medium one, I just jump right in after a sketch because I want to get started. But for all my major paintings, I do these studies. Anyway, you can see that I even wound up changing things. I added a little bit to the composition here. I added quite a bit over there, got more of the sidewalk in. And now you're looking at this and you're probably thinking, wow, that's a really finished study. How long did that take her? So what I do is I actually do a very rough color study. And then in the winter, besides sitting in my car and doing very small paintings, I also finish the study from using the large painting as reference to material to finish the study. So I call this a finished study. I am not as prolific as it may seem, so it's kind of good for me to have something else finished to have the studies in addition to the big ones. Now I'm just going to come over here and show you what a rough study looks like. This is all the information I need in order to figure out what my composition is going to be and to order custom-made stretcher bars. I get my stretcher bars from Upper Canada Stretcher. They make wonderful stretcher bars. They make custom sizes. I love them. Plug out for them. I do not own stock in their company. They just make great stretcher bars. Anyway, as you can see, this is the study for wrought iron chair. I think this painting is from 2003, right before I moved out of New Jersey. This is one of the studies that never got finished. If I don't finish the study within 2 years or so of doing the big version, I'm never going to finish the study because I'm going to be moved on to other things. So sometimes there's a study that gets away. So there's one that got away. I'm now going to go back over here, and I'm going to take this with me, and I'm ready to take questions from the audience. Ask me anything.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Valerie. This has been just really phenomenal to understand your work on such a deeper level. We have a few questions in the chat that I'm going to just address right away. Some of them are about materials.
Okay.
One of them is with the studies, and do you do those on watercolor paper?
Oh, excellent question. I used to do them on gessoed watercolor paper. So the one that I showed you of the wrought iron chair, that was on a little watercolor block, and I would gesso the pages and then peel them off. But they've come up, Arches has this thing, oil paper, where you can, it's already prepared. I don't have to take the time to gesso it. So this one here was actually painted on Arches oil painting paper. It's already all ready to go, it won't deteriorate.
That's awesome. I just wrote a note down of that as well.
It's good stuff, good stuff. And you can cut it into different shapes. Oh, you know, let me show you something real quick along those lines. This is another unfinished study of a painting I did 2 summers ago. You see the masking tape? What I do is I put the paper down on a board like this, and then I bring a roll of tape, and I can make it any composition I want, any size. I discovered that working with paper and tape really expanded my compositional things. I wasn't stuck with just a bunch of small canvases. And did I have the right one with me? Anyway, just a little technical tip.
That is very good to know. How many pieces do you work on at one time?
Oh, that's an excellent question too. I work on one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Usually it's just 2. The light changes so much in about 3 hours that I wound up taking a lunch break and then going and working on another one.
Okay, Joanna P. has a question about being a devoted animal lover. Have you ever painted portraits of Tula or any other pets?
No, I have not. I'm not really an animal painter. Once in a while, there's a bird or something in my paintings, but they don't stand still either. You might notice I don't have many people in my paintings. I don't have many cars in my paintings. I don't have many animals. Things just don't stay still long enough. And since I like working from life, I tend not to do those things. And if I really need a person or a car on a highway or something like that, I will take a snapshot and add it in later.
Fabulous. We're gonna open this up and ask people to unmute and ask their own questions in a minute. I just want to address Michelle's question. Michelle's our communications manager. She
Okay.
said, do you feel that there's an impulse to preserve some sense of time, place that inspires your work? Or is it more like documenting your own fascination with a certain scene?
It can be both, actually. I do consider myself an urban storyteller. That's why that's why I love to work on site, because I find out so much history and so many stories. And that's why when I find a place that's really cool, like Ferris Stoll-Meyer or the Bronx Golf Center, I knew these places were going to be gone, and I wanted to capture them and preserve them before they're gone forever. So it's a little bit of both. A bit documentation, a bit, God, I love that place. I'm in love with the things I paint. I would not spend months on a site if I didn't absolutely love these places. And I'm also interested, which I didn't get into too much in my talk, but you probably have noticed, I'm interested in the way the built world and the natural world collide, and how nature is always creeping in around the edges of whatever we build.
That's very cool to think about as well, especially in that abandoned yard in the North Bronx.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about, like, were you always fascinated with graffiti or street writing, or how did?
No, that came in much later. In New Jersey, I was living in an industrial area, so I started out painting industrial sites and some street scenes, and then I went into that salvage yard. But when I was in New Jersey, I can think of only 2 paintings that ever had graffiti in them. I like to think of the South Bronx in particular, or the Bronx in particular, as one of the birthplaces of contemporary graffiti. When I moved to New Rochelle, I was like, what am I going to paint now? And I found the, Eastchester Barge Canal, that industrial section there. But then I started going deeper into the Bronx. I did a lot of urban water scenes too. But then I got deeper in the Bronx, and there was just all this graffiti. That did not exist in the places in New Jersey and Jersey City and other places where I had been painting before. So it's definitely something that happened from the Bronx. Love the Bronx.
Wonderful. I'm going to go on gallery view for a minute to see everyone that has their camera on. And if anyone has a question that they particularly would like to ask, you can kind of wave or feel free to unmute yourself. Margaret O'Reilly, I saw first.
Hi, Valerie.
Hi, Margaret. So nice of you to pop in.
Great to be here. And I got to say, we miss you in New Jersey.
Oh, I miss you too.
So when we were looking at the Welcome to the Bronx painting that's on the easel, there are 2 paintings behind it. And it was very clear from looking at the 3 paintings then that your palette has changed.
Yes.
Can you talk about why? Was it a natural evolution that just happened, or was it a conscious decision that you made to change your palette?
I think it was purely a natural evolution. As I said from that early painting, the Skyway Hotel, I think I had a dark period there. But now I am definitely more of a colorist than when I started. Although there might have been a colorist in me screaming to come out, but she didn't know how to get out because of that early self-portrait with that orange wall of my mother's laundry room. But I definitely, and color was always an easy thing when I went to art school. I had to really work at drawing and learning hand lettering and all kinds of other things. But mixing color came pretty easy to me. But understanding how to make that color speak in a big painting took time. So I think I was always wanted to be a colorist, but I just got better at it as time went on. And I think that's how my palette became brighter and more colorful.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Robin Borzotto, make sure you unmute yourself before speaking.
Hi, Valerie.
Hey, Valerie.
Hi.
Question, your themes are always large, full buildings, full billboards, complete street scenes. Do you ever focus on smaller subjects, which might also represent a time and place?
Smaller subjects. Yeah, I guess I not too often. Some in the golf center, I mean not the golf center, the salvage yard, I did do a lot of close-ups of stuff. But yeah, I tend to do more panoramic stuff. I mean, I guess one of the things that's most like a close-up, but you can't see it right now, would be that billboard, that solo billboard. Oh, you can see that. Great.
Reminds me of our.
You see, so occasionally I do a close-up of something, but you're right, there's the billboard, and I love that water. Oh, here's one too that is sort of a close-up, kind of a monumental close-up. Let me pull this one out for a second. Can I leave it here? Yeah, there we go. This here is a close-up. This is the observation tower at Orchard Beach in the Bronx. It was built for the 1964 Olympic, for the Olympic rowing team. And they dredged the lagoon, the water here, they dredged that so that the Olympic rowing team could practice. And there's bleachers in here, and I guess the coaches and other people would watch them practice. This thing is now suffering from benign neglect, but I love the feel. It has like this 1960s World Fair kind of, you know, architectural vibe that I found really cool. And I love the way it's all sort of overgrown and stuff. Me, nature, and man, you know, slashing up against each other. Anyway, this has a funny little story. It's actually enclosed behind a fence now. It's no longer in use. The lagoon is still used by rowers from the local colleges and stuff. At least they were last year. Nothing's really happening this year, but last year the world was in a different place. The rowers were still using the lagoon. But the tower, the observation tower, is locked up, and you can't get in there. But one day, because I'm always looking for something to paint, one day the fence was left open. And I rushed to Michael's and bought a pre-stretched canvas. I said, no study, no ordering anything special, no nothing. I just ran to Michael's, and I showed up the next day and started painting. And I got away with that for about a week. Then they started cleaning up the place because it was getting closer to Memorial Day, and they saw me there, and they're like, we got to close this. But I was just so darn lucky. When I was working in another part of the Bronx, I had met this woman who works for Parks, Recreation and Parks in the Bronx, and she gave me her email address. So I emailed her, and I said, I want to finish this painting. Can you help me? And she put me in touch with somebody who put me in touch with the head of the Parks Commission. This lovely woman, Marianne Anderson. And Marianne, she got them to unlock it. She said, it's ever locked. You can use my name. Here's my cell phone number. You can text me or call me if you need me, or just tell them I said it's okay. And then the place was left unlocked, and the few times that it was locked by accident, somebody would come in and unlock it. And I got to spend quite a bit of time working on that thing. Anyway.
It's your own story.
And guess what? In the 1964 Olympics, USA won 4 medals, 2 gold, a silver, and a bronze. Kind of a lucky sight.
Outstanding.
Well, we're quite happy having 2 of your paintings hanging on our wall. So
Thank you.
Would anyone else, you can kind of wave, or if you'd like to have a comment. Yes. MJ, go ahead.
Hi, Valerie.
Hi.
Really enjoying this hour. I had the question that Charlotte asked, but I actually had another question. I am fascinated by your experiences where you are parked in these places and the owners of the building or people who live there come out and talk to you and are curious, and it's incorporated. It feels like it's incorporated in what the decisions you make about the paintings. But one question that occurs to me is, these are all painted on site, they're live. The buildings remain more or less the same, but the skies are changeable, and even from hour to hour or minute to minute. So when you go back and forth between on site, from one day to the next, the skies must be terribly different. And I'm curious how you choose, because some of your skies are sunny and bright, and the trees of vegetation are bright, and some of them are dark and cloudy and gray. And I'm just wondering how you choose what sky you're going to paint with what setting, because that seems to me would change.
Okay, well, that is a very good question. And I consider clouds compositional elements. So I've painted enough skies at this point that I could pretty much make up the sky. So usually what happens is I'll see a sky one day that I really like, and I think that's the sky. And I'll just block it in really quickly. And I can finesse that later because I know how to paint clouds now. And as far as whether I decide on a cloudy day or a sunny day, it often depends whether there are interesting shadows, so I really want a sunny day, like in some of these train trestle paintings, or in the case of the Ruby 87, it didn't look good with the sun. It was all in shadow, and it was really not a good, but on a cloudy day, it looked great. So usually the painting will tell me what it needs, if that makes any sense, and then I will further finesse that by using the clouds and painting them in such a way as to complement the composition.
Fascinating. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question as well. Would anyone else like to have a question or comment? Richard, make sure you unmute yourself before you talk.
Talk a little bit about your materials and your palette. You know, is it oil, acrylic, and what kind of colors do you like?
All of my paintings are oil paintings. I do a little bit of gouache and watercolor. I do a little bit of that sitting in my car, do a little paintings. I'm just gonna pick one up right now just to show you. This is a gouache and watercolor. I block them in with watercolor and then I go back in with gouache, acrylic gouache. So that's to give you an idea that I do some of that. But primarily, I am an oil painter. I love oils. Before I went to art school, I took some classes at community college when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life at all of 18. And at 19, I took an oil painting class at Morris County College, and it was like, oh my God, I found my true love. Once I discovered oil paint, it was like amazing. It was like, that was it. I consider myself so lucky to find my medium so early in my trajectory as an artist. As far as colors, I use a very large palette. I have never met a color I didn't like. So I have like 20 colors on my palette. But some of my favorites, because I do have favorite colors, I love manganese violet. I love cerulean blue. I love raw sienna. And if you mix these three together in different combinations, you can get some wonderful shadows, just with a little white. I don't paint my shadows using black and white. I paint my shadows using color, usually complementary colors of some kind.
Great.
I love that. That was a great question. Thank you. I have a few just technical or professional questions. How long have you been with Lyons Weir?
I had my first show with them in 2015, October 2015. Then I had another show in November 2017. My third show just happened in the end of March into April. And hopefully we'll keep going. I'm very happy to work with them.
Fantastic. Just one note about the, oh, Margaret, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I do. I'm sorry to ask another question, but Valerie, can you talk about artists that you like, that you're looking at, either contemporary or historic?
Oh, sure. You know, I think there's a part of me that may be a wannabe sculptor. Some of my favorite artists are Shekiah Booker and Willie Cole. What they can do, what Shekiah can do with tires, I am a huge fan of Shekiah Booker, who I know. She's a lovely person to do. And Willie Cole, what he does with shoes, just fabulous. And Edward Kienholz, he's dead now, but I love his big installations, another sculptor. And I guess there's a little bit of Shekiah and Willie Cole in Edward Kienholz. So I love his big installations. As far as painters, Anselm Kiefer, I love the crustiness of some of his paintings and the detritus, and he's really good too, although he's sort of an installation sculptor and painter. He does it all. Oh, and as far as old school, Vermeer, I love Vermeer. His paintings were beautiful. And Velázquez, the Spanish painter, Velázquez, fabulous.
Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm just looking. looking to see if anyone else has any other questions at this point. I had a question about the billboard series, the Sign of the Times, the small ones. I guess more of a question or a note, but I love that you painted so many of the Peter Tooney billboards in there. And I was wondering, does he know that you made these paintings of his public art projects on the billboards?
Oh, yes. This artist here, Peter Tooney, however you pronounce it, Tunney. He does know about these because I posted them on Instagram, and we have friends in common. And he actually reposted this one, Courage. He copied it from my Instagram feed. It was me with it in the car and his billboard outside and my painting, and he posted it and said how much he enjoyed it. And also this one too, Tristan, I forget his last name, sorry. He's a famous graffiti artist, collage artist, wonderful artist. He knows about this painting too and said it was very cool.
I just love that. It's almost like a little secret. Well, I guess it's the same with the graffiti writers. It's almost like a secret language of within the artist and the artist collaborations in that community.
Exactly. And I was very happy that Peter took it and, he thought it was great fun. And he loved my photo. He said, nice photo. And what's more, the billboard company out front that have his billboards up, they reposted my painting too. And said how much they liked it. I made the billboard people happy too.
Fantastic. Dorothy Ann.
I guess I should add one more thing. I just found out from my gallery lines that one of the principal owners of this Burns and Harris 800 painting lot has just purchased this painting.
Congratulations. Dorothy Ann, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, as I look at all these paintings, Valerie, and it's so good to see you, checking in here with you from Michigan. You obviously you do not frame them, and you leave your sides unpainted. Do people that purchase these frame them? They're so industrial and urban and whatever, so maybe framing is just not. What do you think about that? Do people frame these things?
Yes, I frame the smaller ones. You might have noticed, but I use floater frames because I'm a person who composes to the edge of my canvas. Yeah. I never compose with the frame in mind. My whole painting is meant to be seen. And a traditional frame takes away anywhere from a quarter to a half inch all the way around. I wouldn't like that. So when I do frame my paintings, I put floaters. If somebody buys one and it isn't framed, I recommend they put a floater on it. Pretty much everybody does that. Now the reason these little guys aren't framed is because they're meant to be exhibited in a grid pattern. See, I want these all to actually hang on a wall like this. These were meant to hang that way at Lionswear Gallery for my Sign of the Times show, but then we never physically got to hang the show, so they didn't. But these are purposely not framed. And then the large paintings, like this one, the Holiday Motel, I use heavy-duty stretcher bars, and I paint the edges so that they're clean. And these are meant to just hang right on the wall without a frame, although you could put a floater. And then, like this one here, which is a study for a large painting, the small ones I do, and this is a floater frame. So you don't cover any of the painting.
And you've done your edges in white, have you?
Yes, I clean up the edges with a little bit of white gesso.
White, even in those ones that float, they've got white edges in there? Oh.
Yes, they do, but they're painted black around the outside, so you don't even notice it. I have a wonderful framer in Long Island City, AMCI, and the woman who I work with, Beatrice, is fabulous. These are good frames. She does a fabulous job.
Thank you.
Well, this has been such a pleasure and a treat. Elaine, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
One last question. Hi, Valerie.
Sure.
Did you say that now that you found this oil painting paper, that's what you use instead of taking a canvas that's already a particular size? Or do you go back and forth? Do you know what I mean?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
So when you first go and look at something and you want to do a study or color study,
Right.
You're taking this oil painting paper with you, taping off the shape that you want for your composition.
Yes. What I do is I do a sketch first. Remember that. I do that rough pen and ink sketch with the rollerball pen.
Right.
And then I go out with a piece of this oil paper, because it's all ready to work on. I don't have to wait to gesso it. And then I bring a big roll of tape. I buy a lot of this tape. It's, you know, that painter's tape. And then I just decide, I already know. By the time I get to the color study, I pretty much know what my composition is going to be because I've already made some sketches. Now I just want to make sure that composition is going to be good. So I'll use the tape to get the shape. And what I do, which is sort of interesting, I'll put multiple strips on that piece of paper, and I'll peel them off and let it grow a little bit if I want to grow the composition. That gives me a lot of information. Then I order the custom-made stretcher bars, and then I go to town. Unless it's something I got to paint immediately, and then I just go buy a small canvas.
Thank you.
Valeri, your attention to detail is so exquisite, and the process and seeing the fine brush that you use on those batting cages is awesome. I know we had several comments in the chat complimenting as well on that new series with the train trestle with the sunlight coming in and that sharp contrast. Those are really stunning, and I'm sure they were new challenging pieces to go into.
And what was interesting about that, just briefly, especially this one here, which had very distinct light and shadow, those shadows didn't stay that way for very long. So what I would do is I'd get to the site like 15, 20 minutes ahead of when I needed, and I'd mix up all the colors. I didn't want to waste any time. And as soon as the light got in the right place, the light and shadow, I just paint those shadows in really quickly and adjust the light really quickly, and then that would disappear, and I'd work on the top part or the foliage. I mean, I can still work for a couple hours, but those shadows and lights only stayed there for a certain amount of time, and I nailed them down as quickly as I could, and I'd go back the next sunny day and add to them. So that was the thing that I really had to get down right away while I had the chance, and then I worked on everything else.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is our absolute last call for questions here.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Elaine, we have one more. Go ahead.
Could you repeat the colors that you like to use that makes up your shadow color?
What I do is I do have this basic color that I talked about, manganese violet mixed with cerulean blue and grayed with raw sienna and adjusted for lightness and darkness with white. That is my basic color mixture, but I do all kinds of things to change it. Sometimes I add a little more purple, sometimes I'll add some green if it's a shadow on a grass area. So it's sort of my basic mixture, but I do switch it up depending on what the shadow is laying on.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. It's been a really fascinating look into your studio and your process, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Valeri, do you have any closing comments or things you want us to know about what's coming up? Or
no, just a big thank you for spending your time with me this evening, and a big thank you, Charlotte, for letting me have this opportunity. Big thank you to the audience. A big thank you to Amy Regalia for filming me. God, what a good friend she is. And as far as things coming up, stay tuned. Get on my email list. Follow me on Instagram. That's the best way to know what I have coming up. Hopefully the world will get back to normal. Stay safe, wash your hands, be kind, and don't forget that mask. That's my last thing I have to say.
all right. Thank you so much, Valeri. Again, thank you everyone for joining us on the studio visit. Stay in touch with the Pelham Arts Center. You can follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Pelham Arts Center. We will be doing more of these. And as you can see, these have been really awesome conversations to get to know artists. And we really appreciate you being here to learn with us. So thank you so much. I can't wait to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Till next time.
Bye. Thanks, Val.
Bye. Thank you for coming.